Please welcome Monica Lee.
Thank you. I'm going to try to walk around a little bit instead of standing behind the podium. If you do know my parents, then you will know why this is a natural fit for me and why I love my job so much, being in education, but also helping our students get ready for life after high school. Is there anybody in here that went to school with Mr. McNair, that knew him personally? Nobody. Okay. All right. Well, then some of these stories might be a little bit new for you to hear. So I did want to focus on Mr. McNair as much as possible, and not the speech Mike gave you about me, but really about Mr. McNair and his life here in Rutherford County, and then his impact on Rutherford County since he started our foundation. But you will see, and I had a video, but we can't get into Apple on here, so I wouldn't be able to pull up the video. But Robert McNair actually grew up in the Harris community. If you drive down 221 coming from Rutherford towards Chase High School, where the big water tower is right there, there's a little white house right under the water tower. That is the house that he grew up in when he lived in Rutherford County. So as you drive now, you'll know that that's where he grew up. And we're going to talk about how he ended up at Cool Springs. But as you can see, Mr. and Mrs. McNair's names are synonymous with Students Pursuit of Post-Secondary Education in Rutherford County. And in 2013, they were inducted into the Rutherford County Schools Education Foundation Hall of Fame. They were among the first inductees there. And it's also become, the program that they started here has become a model for across the country for other programs, especially with our mentor program. Mr. McNair went to Cool Springs High School, so I said he grew up in the Harris community, but he was very interested in playing organized sports, and at that time I think it was pretty limited at Harris, and so he wanted to go to Cool Springs High School where he could be involved in the sports through the high school. And so he went into Cool Springs High School, which is how he knew Chuck Flack. If all of y'all may be familiar with Chuck Flack. They were good friends. And so he would actually hitchhike from Harris into Forest City, spend the week with Chuck Flack's house so he could go to school at Cool Springs High School, and then on the weekends he would hitchhike back out to his parents' house and spend the weekend in the Harris community. So he spent a lot of time with Chuck Flack, and you'll see how that comes to fruition later on. But because he went to Cool Springs High School, his investment at East High School makes sense. That is the school that Cool Springs turned into when they built the new high school. It became East Rutherford High School, and that is why he started his foundation there. These are some pictures of him from his yearbook. You can see him third from the left there. He was a member of his senior class Student Government Association. He was the class secretary. He also played basketball, football, and baseball at Cool Springs High School. You can see, I like his little comment over there, sparkling wit, endless commendable traits, good look, add to his personality. And then this is a picture of him on y'all's right, where he played basketball, but as I said, he played all three sports when he was at Cool Springs High School. And I just wanted to talk about some of the stories that he told us, because where you saw that on his senior picture, that he had endless wit and such a great personality. He evidently was a little mischievous when he was in high school, and probably earlier than that. But he always told the story of skipping school with Chuck Flack, and they got into the car and drove out in front of the school on Main Street, and the car died. And they couldn't get it started back, and it couldn't go anywhere until the principal came out there and found them in the front of the school and promptly took them back into the school, and so they didn't get to skip school that day. Also, if any of you know where Jack McKinney Road is in Harris, right off 221, well, he says he is the reason that they paved Jack McKinney Road, because back in the day when he was here, they put that little cord across the road that counts how many people go across the road to see if it needs to be paved. And he said he used to go out and jump up and down on it to up the numbers, and so that's how it got paved eventually, because of him. He also worked at Ron and Eddie's, and so that is something that every time he came here, he wanted to go by and share those stories about working there. That was one of his first jobs in the county. And then he also used to quote the graveyard cheers, and I cannot remember them right now. Do any of y'all remember the graveyard cheers?
I don't remember all of it, but the last time I said,
cheered. So that's what I can remember, that part too, and I can't remember the other. But he would say the cheers when we were out there, because that's what they used against all their opponents, was that they were going to beat them, and then they had a graveyard conveniently right next door. So he did have a good sense of humor, and it was a self-deprecating sense of humor, but he obviously enjoyed life from high school on. After high school, Mr. McNair went to the University of South Carolina. His senior year, he ended up being the president of the student body, and there also where he met his wife Janice. But one of the stories he also told us about going to South Carolina is he actually had planned to go to NC State to play basketball. That was where he had planned to go to college, and he was going to play basketball. But the coach there ended up leaving right before he went, and so he was no longer invited to come to play basketball. And he said that he ended up going in to take a test. It was some kind of test for the military. And he went in and he did like half of it. I think he said he had to go to the bathroom and couldn't even finish it, so he left. But somehow he ended up getting whatever that scholarship was, and that's how he ended up at the University of South Carolina. So it really was not a planned thing for him. He was just trying to get to college whichever way he could, and that's how he ended up at college. While he was at South Carolina, he met his wife Janice Suber, who attended Columbia College, which was an all-female college there. They obviously got married, and they moved to Houston, Texas, and he had $700 in his pocket. When they moved, he started a trucking company there that actually went bankrupt. He had several companies that did not achieve what his later companies obviously achieved. But he kept trying to make a business in Houston. And he's told us several times that he went to Houston because that's where the capital was. Not the capital like capital Washington, D.C., but the capital like money. There were lots of investors there. And he felt like that would be his best chance to be successful, was to go where there were investors to help him get his businesses started. So after he had those several companies, he started Cogent Technologies, and that's how he made his money. And Cogent Technologies is an alternative energy source. It started in Houston, Texas, and then spread. He had a big plant in New Jersey, and I'm pretty sure that plant helped provide the electricity for New York City. And he had several plants across the country. So that's how he made his money and where he became successful. In 1999, he sold Cogent Technologies, and in that same year, he was awarded the NFL franchise that became the Houston Texans. So he was very excited about that. That was really his passion. If you knew him, that was the main focus for him in his later years. But he also continued to have lots of other ventures. He was a very busy man until probably the day he died, honestly. He had the McNair Group, which managed his family's investments. Palmetto Partners was a real estate company that managed their real estate investments and continues to do so today. He started Cogene Biotech Ventures, and they worked a lot with people who were creating and creating new medical machines or equipment to help in the medical field. He also started the McNair Scholars at Baylor College of Medicine, and what this was that group looked for scientists from all over the country that were researching breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, juvenile diabetes, and neurosciences. So those were the 4 areas they were researching. And what they did is they brought 4 or 5 a year new scientists to Baylor College of Medicine. They funded their research lab because that's very expensive to get started, and they helped these scientists get started with their research lab, helped them get the funding in the first year, funded it for the first 3 years, and then started bringing the funding down each year as those people became successful and were able to get grants and things to continue to fund their research. And so his big focus on the Baylor College of Medicine for the McNair Scholars was that any findings they had to be collaborative and shared with other scientists, so there was a better chance of finding cures for diseases. And so they wanted to make sure the research was not just kept for that particular person, but shared across the board and across the world. And they have brought in 4 or 5 a year, and that started, I'm not sure what year it started, but they probably have 30-ish groups or scientists that they've funded up to this point that are still doing that research in Houston. And we've been lucky enough to be able to partner with some of these scientists and bring them here into Rutherford County schools to work with our science teachers and our students. So that's been a great thing for us as well. They also have the Robert and Janice McNair Foundation, which is different than the Robert and Janice McNair Educational Foundation. And this is the foundation that they started, that's their family foundation, that is purely a funding foundation. And so they take requests for or proposals from different areas and fund some of those proposals. Mostly their focus is on medical. They've done a lot in the medical field and a lot of research funding and those kinds of things. But that foundation is in Houston. It gets confused with us a lot. I get lots of requests for money, which is not what we do. But that is the other foundation. Ours is the Educational Foundation. So now to get into his impact on Rutherford County since he left. Obviously, when he did leave and go to Houston, he never forgot his roots and wanted to make sure that when he became successful, that he gave back to the places that were part of his growing up and his heritage. So in 1988, on Christmas Eve, he called Chuck Flack at home and told him that he and Janice had been discussing it and that they really wanted to start a foundation at East Rutherford High School, which had previously been Cool Springs High School, now it's East Rutherford High School, and that they wanted to pledge $2 million to that school. And he had very specific ideas about what he wanted to do with that. So what he has said all along is that when he was at Cool Springs High School, that he had many friends that were as smart or smarter than he was and could have been more successful than he was, but they either did not have the means or they did not have the motivation to go to college. And so his idea was to start this foundation to help students get those means to go on to post-secondary education. And that was his goal with the whole foundation. When it started, again, he called on Christmas Eve 1988. He asked Chuck to pull some people together to help start this foundation. Chuck pulled together a friend of his, Buck Petty, who was the superintendent at Rutherford County Schools at the time, and Ron Paris, who was my father, who was the editor and publisher of the Daily Courier. And the three of them, along with Mr. and Mrs. McNair, started the foundation and grew the foundation basically for the next 20 years. It was those five that worked with the foundation for the most for 20 years. It started in 1989, was the first year they gave out financial aid to students. I think the next year was when it actually became the Rope Award. And the very first Rope Award was $100 and a dictionary and a thesaurus. That's what students got. They did have some financial need scholarships for students, but the majority of the students got the $100 and their dictionary and thesaurus. Just to compare that, now our students get $8,000 and no dictionary or thesaurus since they can get that online now. I will say too that the foundation, when it first started, as I said, was to help students find the means to go to college. I think they learned pretty quickly what their plan was to help students find financial aid. Mr. McNair felt that number one, education was the way to help our whole county become more successful, to have well-educated citizens. But their goal was to help students find financial aid. They felt like there was financial aid out there that our students weren't accessing, and they wanted to train some financial aid counselors to help our students so they could find financial aid. Learned really quickly that our seniors were not eligible for some of the financial aid because they hadn't taken the right classes or made the right grades or done those things. They really hadn't had the path that they needed to have to make them eligible for those things. So then they sort of changed their focus and started working with students to help them meet all those other things that they needed to meet so they could access financial aid. Again, realized really quickly that seniors it's too late to start that. They did not have the right classes and had not done the things they needed to do. And at that point, they started backing things up until they had all high school students involved in the foundation, and we're working with all high school students. Just a very quick history of the foundation, and I can go back into any of this, but there has been 3 directors of the foundation. Jim Songster was the first director that they found. He was actually in New York City riding a subway to work when he picked up the newspaper and saw the job advertisement. I'm not real sure what newspaper that would have been if he made it all the way to New York City from Rutherford County. But he applied, and he and his family moved here. And I never met him, but by all accounts, he was very personable and just a fantastic man, and did a lot to help get this off the ground. Getting involved in the school, putting counselors at ease with what we were doing. This foundation was different in that we weren't just giving money to the schools to do something. The money was investing in people to help our students. And so again, it doesn't take place of anything that was already in the school, and I think Jim did a lot of work with that to make sure our counselors were comfortable. It was an added support for our counselors and our school teachers and our administrators to help our students get where they needed to be. In 1996, Mr. Songster had an aneurysm and was no longer able to be director of the foundation. So in 1997, Vernon Hoyle came in, and he had been in higher education for many years before he started working here. And I will say, if any of you know Phil Dunford, he was actually the interim director in between Songster and Vernon Hoyle. So he worked in the foundation for about a year in between the two of them. So he always had a special place in his heart for the foundation too. Vernon stayed with the foundation until 2009 when he retired, and then I started in May of 2009 and am currently finishing up my 15th year with the foundation. So there's only been 3 directors there, and I think with each director it has built on what we've learned and trying to focus more on what we're doing with our students and making sure they're successful. The first scholarships were given in 1989. Our mentor program, which I would say is our biggest program and our most successful program, and is the program that Mr. McNair was the most proud of. He talked about the mentor program every time we were down there, and then a lot when we weren't down there. But it began in 1991, and I think we had less than 20 mentors at that time that agreed to work with students. And the first focus was to get financial aid, and then it was focused on making sure students were taking the right classes and making the right grades became their focus. In 1992, the foundation added the first full-time staff member beside the director. That was when it started growing a little bit, and that person managed the mentors. 1993, we started Jumpstart, which is still going today with all 3 high schools. As Mike said, in 2009, we expanded to Chase High School, and that was the first expansion. So we had been at East High School for 20 years before any expansions were made. It went so well, and when we expanded to Chase High School, Grady Franklin actually took that project on and worked with the board to recruit mentors and talk to the school staff and make sure there was a smooth transition to Chase High School and to help find mentors. And what was a 5-year plan, because we thought it would take a while to find mentors and get everything in place, because of Grady's work, ended up in the first year we were pretty much fully implemented at Chase High School by the end of that first school year. And then in 2009, we also began some of our middle and elementary school programs. Those were some programs that we just had some ideas about and wanted to see if they would work. And so we started just a couple of programs in each of the schools that fed into East High School at that point, and later expanded them to the other 2 high schools. In 2012, Mr. McNair and Mrs. McNair agreed to expand again to RS Central High School. And when I say agreement comes with a lot of financial assistance. So one of the things that I think was most successful and most notable from them is that they stayed invested in our community. It wasn't a one-time thing where they just funded money and said, go do what you can do with that and we'll see what happens. Each time they thought about an idea, or we presented an idea, they considered it, and they continued to be invested personally and financially in our community. So in 2012, we were able to expand to RS Central High School. In 2016, we started a program called our GPS for Success program. And that program was working with students who were in college. We learned in 2016 that we were being very successful at getting our students to college, but they were not staying, they were not finishing, which is a nationwide problem, but we're lucky enough to be able to address that problem. And so in 2016, we started a program with a staff member who was completely focused on our college students and working with our college students, trying to help them overcome the barriers that would keep them from being successful in college. And so that program's still going today. At that point in 2016, our programs were implemented from kindergarten through college completion. So we were able to follow students and work with students and build this pipeline for our students, starting in kindergarten and trying to finish with them completing whatever their college degree would be. In 2016, we expanded our mentor program. Up until that point, our mentors worked with 9th through 12th graders at the 3 public high schools. In 2016, our superintendent, Janet Mason at the time, came to me, and there was a pilot program that the state was doing that was raising the dropout age from 16 to 18. So they couldn't drop out until they were 18. But the principals also were saying, we want to do this, but if we're going to do this, then we've got to put more supports in. So she asked me if we would be willing to expand our mentor program into the middle school. It was an idea we had already been toying with. So we worked together, figured out how to make it work, and we have fantastic mentors who said, yes, we'll do that. We'll take the challenge on. And so we expanded into the 7th grade, and so now students from 7th through 12th grade have an adult mentor that meets with them every other month to make sure they're on track and stays with them all the way through high school graduation. So that's been a really big deal for our programs. If you look at this picture here, you will see the original board, and Vernon Hoyle is after Songster, but they were with Mr. and Mrs. McNair in Houston. And then that was an earlier picture, obviously, because I look a little bit younger than I do 15 years later at the McNair's home in one of our meetings when we go to Houston. Mr. McNair passed away in 2018, but he and his family have stayed committed to our foundation. Just to go back to the programs really quickly, as I said, we work from kindergarten through college completion, but we are in the traditional public middle school and high school programs. So that means East Chase and RS Middle and East Chase and RS High School. That's who we work with. Most of our programs are in the high school, but our elementary and middle school programs are set up to help kids become aware of careers and colleges and post-secondary education. We've also spent a lot of time redefining what college means for our students. So when we say college, we're not just talking about a 2 or 4 year program. We're talking about any type of education after high school. So if they come to a continuing ed program over here and get a certification, if they go into the military and get continued training to help them in their careers, whatever that training looks like, it's education after high school, and to us and to our students in our community, that is college for us now. The 70% of our jobs in the future are going to require some type of education after high school, and so what we're trying to do now is help our students think about what they might want to do and make sure they understand what type of education they need to get to that career. And so that's what a lot of our work does with our high school students. Okay, and as I said, Mr. McNair passed away in 2018, but his wife has continued to be invested in what we do, his family. And Mr. McNair set us up so that we could bring everything locally and still continue our foundation to serve our students. And so we are very happy that even with his passing, we are still able to serve our students and plan to continue to do that for a while. That is our goal with our students. These are some of our pictures from programs. As I said, you can see from young age, we did a college fair right there in the middle. Those are students doing college fairs for their parents and for upper class students that they teach them about the colleges that they go to. You see us talking to students. You see some of our mentors. We visit our college students. We do career lunches so students can meet people in their career field they're interested in. There's just a wide range of things we do, leadership programs, all of those kinds of things to work with our students and try to help them get ready for whatever career and education pathway they need as they go forward. This is the way that we continue to carry on the legacy of Mr. McNair. I actually brought tonight the original outline of what Mr. and Mrs. McNair wanted to create when they created the foundation. This is the original paperwork that they did. And I feel like our foundation is carrying on that legacy, working with our students. We are lucky to have a board that supports that and supports some of our sometimes crazy ideas of things we want to do to help our students be successful. But everything we do is trying to focus on helping our students think about what is important to them, what they want their future to look like, and figuring out the way to get there for them. So to date, currently we have right around 210 mentors serving 3,400 students in our middle school and high school. The 210, there's about 70 per high school. That can fluctuate. Sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less, but it's right about there. As I said, we're serving students from kindergarten to college completion. To date, we have given away 2,963 ROPE Awards, and those students have provided 342,524 service learning hours in our community, volunteer hours in our community. And we've in total given out 3,038 scholarships totaling $15,289,480 to the students of Rutherford County. And so that is something obviously we're very proud of, and again, that is the legacy of Robert McNair in Rutherford County. Mr. McNair has also invested in other things in Rutherford County. His main focus obviously is education and the foundation, and that would have been plenty for the county as much as he's done with that. But I'm sure most of you know McNair Field over there behind Cool Springs is the home of the Forest City Owls and some other things that go on over there. And he funded, I think, at least half of the cost of redoing that facility and creating that field there. He also helped to fund a baseball training facility at East Rutherford High School, which now has his name on it, and helped fund, again, half of that. He funded half of the football field at Chase High School. And when I say he funded the football field, they resurfaced the whole field, and he was able to give a matching grant to them to do that, to take the surface off and replace the surface there. And he's also given some grants to Isothermal Community College. Most recently was a $300,000 grant, I think, to work with their vocational education programs, I think. So he's done a lot in the community besides the foundation, but he has a very strong legacy, and it just continues to show that he stayed committed to this county and to the people in this county where he grew up until his death. And so we have a lot to be thankful for to him, and he's left a very strong living legacy through all the things that he has done in Rutherford County and especially in the school system. And so we're extremely grateful for the things he has done. So anytime people say anything about the work we do or thank us for what we're doing, it's not us. That was Mr. McNair who has done that. We've been lucky enough to be able to carry on that legacy, but without his financial commitments and personal commitments, there's no way we could have done the things we're doing. Okay. This is the end. I just wanted to show you that in the beginning, this was the logo for the foundation. This bridge, it was building bridges to a better tomorrow through education. And then I actually think it was Grady Franklin who didn't really love that because it looked crumbling down and dying. So he wanted something that looked like it was leading to something better, so they used that logo. And then when I got here, a few years after I got here, we started with that logo. And we are now to this logo, so you can just see the progression over time, and sort of goes along with the progression of the programs and the things we do at the foundation.
Thank you, Monica, and thank all of you for coming tonight. I'll add just a little bit about my connections with the McNairs. I grew up in the Harris community and lived for 8 years not very far from the McNairs, and when I was 12 years old, I started a weekly newspaper route, and Mr. R.F. McNair, Robert's father, was one of my subscribers, and I saw him every week, and I think maybe twice out of that time, Robert McNair was probably a senior in college when I was doing that, but I saw him a couple of times and had no idea that he was going to be such a benefactor for Rutherford County and Rutherford County schools. And I also serve as a mentor now, and two of my grandsons have benefited from the awards, and my daughter-in-law's brother, Jonathan Frost, served many years as Toro, the mascot for the Houston Texans. So he would come home and see Sarah and come by the house and dress up for my grandkids, and so we had a big time with all that. But thank you again for coming tonight, and thank you, Monica, for this presentation and for updating us and bringing us more intimately aware of what the McNairs have done for Rutherford County. I want to invite you to our next History Matters program. It will be on April 4th, the first Thursday in April, and the title of that program is From Brush Arbors to Stained Glass. And it's going to be about the beginnings of churches in Rutherford County. Our first speaker that night will be Reverend Lance Smith, who is pastor of First Presbyterian Church in Forest City, and he's going to talk about the beginnings of Presbyterian churches, especially Britain Presbyterian, the first church west of the Catawba River in North Carolina. So he's going to present that. Then our second speaker is Mr. Reagan Clark, who I'm sure many of you know. Reagan was a school principal. He's a historian and an outdoorsman, and he loves history, and he's going to talk about the Methodist churches and how it led to the establishment of Oak Grove Methodist Church, the first Methodist church in Rutherford County. And by the way, he is a lay speaker in the Methodist Church. And then I will follow up on that with the Baptist churches, starting with Green River Baptist Church, which is actually in Polk County, and is now, that Green River Church is now the first Baptist church in Mill Springs. And then I will talk about Bills Creek Baptist Church, which was the first Baptist church in present-day Rutherford County. And then the program will end with Pastor Tony Bellew, who she'll be talking about the Episcopal Church in Rutherford County, from St. John's Episcopal Church to St. Francis and St. Gabriel. So I think you're going to enjoy this program, and I hope all of you will come back and bring somebody with you, because these speakers are going to be interesting, I think. So thank you so much for coming tonight. Look forward to seeing you again on the 4th of April, the first Thursday night in April, right after Easter. The reason we have Christian churches in Rutherford County, the reason we have Christian churches anywhere. So come next month if you can. Thank you so much for coming.